Here's Brody Brazil.
I want to begin with what I think is maybe the second most interesting sports story of the last year. Obviously, the A's will be a conversation for later, but the Pac-12 network and the Pac-12 essentially dissolving, the conference ceasing to exist, essentially. And I know you're in tight with it and close with it, and you call Pac-12 games. What in the heck am I supposed to make of this? It's disappointing, and I'm somebody that, with San Jose State as my background, I don't have any horse in this race, and it's not, I'm not overly passionate about one school or the other. I just look at this as a West Coast person and say, what a shame.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm not individually passionate about any individual school because I did not go to a Pac-12 school.
Right.
I went to Fresno State, so we're a couple of
state guys.
A couple of state guys here, a couple of staties. But one thing I am very passionate was the quality of work that was done at the Pac-12 network.
Yeah.
We had we still got a basketball season to finish, and there'll be some other events, but really high quality production people, like the studios initially, for a long time up until last year, in the same building as your NBC job.
Right upstairs,
and
yeah.
They did such, we were doing remote stuff, which wasn't always my, you didn't, from my position, doing a remote play-by-play event.
It's hard, so
was not
hard.
what I wanted. I'd rather be there, but at the same time, we did it really well. Like from a technical standpoint, really high quality picture, really good producers, directors, audio people, like everybody. And then they built for the last year, what turned out to be the last year, the league didn't know this when they were building it, or at least the league as we know it, a facility in San Ramon, which they also did. I did studio shows from there during football season. An excellent job on. And, unfortunately, a lot of that stuff would get lost in the network launched and the Pac-12 era launched with controversy that never ended.
Right.
Because the network was not carried on DirecTV. And that would often be the first thing people would bring up to me, understandably so. Like, I think the miscalculation, if I'd been in those initial meetings at the Pac-12, and I'm comfortable saying this because I would have said this in the meetings, as somebody who's lived on the West Coast for most of his life, if you're banking on the casual fan revolting against DirecTV, that's probably going to be a losing battle, right? Because for people who don't know, like, the league did not have the rights to the tier 1 game. So the best games, if you're a Washington fan or a Cal fan or a Stanford fan or a USC fan, they were still going to be on ESPN and Fox. And so you needed enough hardcore fans
to find you.
Yeah, well, you need enough hardcore fans to say to DirecTV, you need to take the Pac-12 network or I'm leaving.
Right. Okay, to make that stand. I get it.
To make that stand. I'm leaving Sunday Ticket. I'm going to walk out. And when you look at our stadium sizes on the West Coast, they are not the stadium. They're just not as big. Your average, your median, they are not as big as in the Midwest and in the South. You just probably were never going to win that battle. Now, there were other complicating factors. One of the conditions I remember being told of the DirecTV deal was going to be that every school had to make AT&T its primary telecommunications provider. And, for the state schools, some of them had state contracts. That was just not going to be possible. So, but anyway, these are things you would think that you could overcome it. They never did. And that put the league, at first it put the network, and then it put the league, in a very, they're fighting not just a distribution issue, but a PR issue that was, probably unwinnable from that standpoint in the end. So that's a long answer, Brody, but that's like the first part of it, right? And I've been wondering, one thing I've been wondering the last month, I'd say, watching Florida State and North Carolina, some of these ACC schools are seeing they're in a long-term television deal that pays them significantly less, Big Ten and the SEC. And it has made me wonder, even if a deal could have been done at $35 million per school per year with Apple, let's say, which
I was about to ask you about that.
I think would have been really cool. Like, for the things I've heard about that Apple deal would have been really cool. But I do also understand, Kalen DeBoer, who left Washington to be Alabama's coach, he was one of the people very concerned internally about will we lose in recruiting because it's going to be more difficult for people to find. And what the counter argument was, well, name something Apple has failed at. There's not a lot of, when Apple puts the full force.
I love my
behind
Apple
it.
Watch, by the way,
Yeah,
and my phone
exactly.
and the computer that I'm Zooming you on right now.
Yeah.
It's
So-
amazing that it all came down to the TV stuff, the money stuff. And granted, I know it's college sports and it's a business by nature, but like all the stuff that you're angling towards has nothing to do with, oh, the geography didn't work or the schools didn't like each other or there was some personal rift. It's like they literally all couldn't get the best deal out of it. And you mentioned that Apple thing. From what I understand, Apple was proposing a deal where it's kind of like what they do with F1, where they'll just do your whole package and everything would be on Apple and use the Pac-12 network as its production. I mean, that seems like a slam dunk, and they couldn't agree to it, it sounds like.
Which, as you know, is what the NFL does with Thursday Night Football on Amazon.
Right.
That's an NFL production. It's what Major League Baseball does with their Apple. You know,
Right.
that is an MLB production on
Right.
Apple. So, yeah, I mean, look, I would have loved the deal. It would have been, I think, probably good for me, just based on I live in the Bay Area. It's near the production studio, right?
Right.
And I think it would have been cool. I think Apple would have done some. I think there's so many cool things you could do with Apple. I think it's being disingenuous though to also say, well, okay. Would you have been in front of as many people as you needed to be in front of? And let's just say maybe not initially, but within 2 years it would have paid off. Let's just say that.
Yep.
You still have the gap, the financial gap between, the SEC and the Big Ten. That we're talking about institutions that are making twice as much money per year, right? We're talking about like $75 million per year per school versus, the Big 12 and the ACC that are in the 30s, and that's where the Pac-12 was going to be. And, I do wonder if ultimately you would have just been. I think you have to be, if you're going to be totally transparent, you have to also say you would have been wondering if we were just extending the inevitable.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right.
This was going to
Delaying
happen
the
anyway. Yeah.
inevitable. That ultimately we're breaking off. This is what Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, who's one of the major figures in college athletics, believes. Ultimately, what we will have is pick a number, 45 team tier of college football.
Wow.
Right. And Chip, where college football has to break away from everybody else.
Yeah.
And which it already kind of has. Like the college football playoff is not an NCAA event.
Right.
Yeah. So it's
I see where this is going.
and I do believe that's where it's going, Brody.
Yeah.
I do think it has to go that.
That's
I think it
interesting.
probably has to go that direction.
We'll leave that there for now. That's getting me thinking about a lot of different things now.
It's hard to stay surface level on that.
No, that one that's deep, and that gets my mind racing about like what does the next 10 years look like for college sports and college football.